The United States House of Representatives has 435 representatives. See, I looked it up. And these 435 representatives this number was codified into law in 1911. So this is when William Howard Taft was president. In 1911, the number 435 was decided as a reasonable number to reflect the American population, but it's still a small enough number to be functional. Usually, the smaller the group, the more functional it tends to be. You have about under 450 people. That is probably going to work out if the people are good and if they have focus and good rules and traditions and so forth. So in 1911, the number is capped at 435, but the downside of that, there's always a downside to a choice, even if there's an upside. The downside to that is that each time we have a census, each congressional representative represents far more people than they used to. So back in 1911, a congressman would represent this many people. Now in 2020, they represent many more times that, or at least larger, significantly larger group. Now, if you want to include the Senate, well, we'll talk about the Senate, but 435 members of the House. How long is the term of office of a House of Representatives congressman? A House of Representatives serves the shortest term of all federal officers, 2 years. And that's not that much time. 2 years isn't necessarily enough time to even learn where everything is in Washington. That takes many years. So why would we elect people on a 2-year basis? Well, what our founders decided was that if we are going to have representatives of the people, they should have frequent contact with the people. And that means that they should be forced regularly to go back to the people and say, how am I doing? Am I doing okay? You like what I'm doing? You not like what I'm doing? You want me to do different? I can do different. You want me to do the same? I can do more of the same. You just tell me and I'll do it. That's sort of a delegate model approach, but you get the idea. And if the people don't like you, you're out of there. And a new representative takes office. Now, the founders thought that this was sufficient. They didn't imagine that we would start electing people for life. For example, Congresswoman Pelosi of San Francisco, the Democratic Speaker of the House, has been a congresswoman from San Francisco since the late 1970s, since I was in middle school. And she's still there, career politician. Some states have tried to institute arbitrary term limits, which say you can only serve 3 terms or 6 terms, and then you got to go home and let somebody else have the job. But there are unintended consequences to this idea of term limits. Number one, is it constitutional? Does somebody really have the right to say you can't vote for who you want? The second question is, are you putting your district at a real disadvantage? If every 6 to 12 years you have to have a new representative, whether the people would want one or not, how is your representative going to actually have an advantage against the other representatives who've been there 20, 30, 40, 50 years? So some people feel or think, sorry about that, some people think that a congressional representative that is term limited is really at a disadvantage. Other people think, well, it gives more people a chance to be citizen legislatures rather than professional politicians. But they're elected for 2-year terms, so that at the very least they've got to go back every 2 years and stand for election and encounter and deal with and talk to the people. And if they get too haughty or too uppity or too disconnected from their people, they're going to get voted out of office. Key committees in the House. There are committees in the House of Representatives and in the U.S. Senate that mirror the various bureaucracies of the federal government. For example, the House Ways and Means Committee. Ways and Means Committee. There's a weird name. What does it mean? The House Ways and Means Committee deals with raising taxes and spending money. It is a very powerful committee because the Congress takes part not only in raising taxes, but in writing the budget. And each congressman wants to bring jobs, well, presumably, AOC aside, wants to bring jobs and industries to their district so that they can go back to the people in 2 years and say, I brought jobs. Jobs are here because of me. I brought this factory here. I brought this business here. And therefore, if you got jobs there, I'm sort of involved in that. Maybe you want to vote for me for re-election. So Ways and Means, the House Ways and Means Committee makes that determination. But there's a House Intelligence Committee that is supposed to monitor the Central Intelligence Agency and the FBI. There's a House Justice Committee that's supposed to monitor various things to deal with the laws of justice. There are also various ad hoc committees that come and go. For example, in the late 1940s, as the communist menace became more clear to larger numbers of Americans, as the world was being split into a free world and a communist world, the House of Representatives established what was called HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee. And the House Un-American Activities Committee investigated the activities of the Communist Party of the United States and of American communists to ferret out Soviet spies and infiltrators into our government to act as agents of Moscow and not representatives of their own people. And the most famous case from the House Un-American Activities Committee was when a State Department official named Alger Hiss, who was very well thought of and very well connected and looked like a leader and spoke like a leader and was involved with establishing the UN, was revealed to be a Soviet agent by sort of a fat, dumpy fellow named Whittaker Chambers. The House Un-American Activities Committee brought this out. Later, the House Un-American Activities Committee was dissolved because times changed and people's priorities changed as well. We now have environmental committees in the House of Representatives that would have been unintelligible to people of earlier generations. In the House, the majority rules. There is no limit, there is no tripwire or failsafe or circuit breaker. If the House is ruled by a majority that has one Democrat more than one Republican, all the major decisions will go for the Democrats. All the key leadership positions will be determined by the Democrats. And the same is true of the Republicans. When the Republicans have run the House, even if it's been by a razor-thin majority, they have done so because in the House, the majority rules. The Senate has some different traditions than this. But because of this, there's sort of a harshness and a tyranny within the House of Representatives that if you're in the minority party, you're going to get stepped on and treated with disdain. And if you're in the majority party, you're going to get all sorts of perks and benefits. It really is political hardball in the House of Representatives where there is no restraint on majority rule, except, of course, for the Constitution and the will of the people. The House is widely considered to be, of all branches of the federal government, of all aspects of the federal government, closest to the people. That is why it is often called the People's House, because it was always intended to be representatives of everyday American people in small congressional districts, people who have to go back to those to their electors, to the electorate, to the people, and say, am I doing okay? Do you want me to do different? That is the real job of the House of Representatives, to represent moment by moment, year by year, the differing opinions and the differing identities within all of the various 435 congressional districts within the United States. By the way, every 10 years, the House changes, because every 10 years there's a census. And once the data from the census has been percolated, some states will lose representatives, other states will gain representatives, and what the lines are for each boundary of each district is also going to change. Which brings us to the final word of this video. The final word of this video is one you've heard before. It's gerrymandering. Gerrymandering, Gerrymandering. Gerrymandering, Gerrymandering. I had to think about it for a moment. Named after Governor Jerry of Massachusetts, gerrymandering is where you draw these weird, distorted, contorted, tortuous shapes of congressional districts where you've got like one congressional district over here, but then you've got a connection and it goes here so that you can have one party reliably dominate this district, and the party sort of in between is also going to, it basically is skewing the results to favor one party or the other. Both parties have done this. One party tends to be better at it and less ashamed about it, but both parties are guilty of using gerrymandering. It is unfortunately a part of the game, and the courts have stepped in and they have tried to eliminate extreme cases of gerrymandering. But every state legislature, once they get the idea of how many congressional representatives they have, it then goes back to the state legislatures who then draw the new boundaries. So congressmen are, in many ways, dependent upon friendly relations with the state legislature, because if the people in Boise like you, and we're going to get a third representative, or we're going to lose a representative, and we'll probably keep two, but if we may get a third, if you're not friendly with the state legislature can redraw the boundaries of your district so that you'll lose. So there is a connection between Congress, the census, and the state legislatures. And we want to avoid, where possible, gerrymandering. Next time, the U.S. Senate.